Welcome to the Postmodern Art Podcast, the podcast dedicated to giving artists who are wowing the world over the platform they deserve. I am your host, Sian Ragland, and as we inch ever so closer to Halloween of 2024, let's bring in a guest and let's sink our teeth into a fantastic conversation about an amazing comic artist that you need to be hearing about and seeing the tales they are ready to unleash onto the world. Today's guest is Sian Mandrake, an illustrator, writer, and comic book artist who has a brand new comic book series out called Blood of the Taken. Sian was a fantastic guest that was recommended to me by Tipsy J Hearts, and honestly, just by seeing their art alone, I knew I had to have them on. Getting the chance to talk about their fantastic new comic as well was just a wonderful icing on the cake, and it leads to a wonderful conversation that you are absolutely going to love. If you enjoy Sian, please make sure you support them with the links down in the description below, especially by going ahead and purchasing Blood of the Taken on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, and wherever you can find comic books. If you enjoy the podcast, make sure you like, share, subscribe, or follow whatever audio streaming platform you prefer. Leave 5 stars wherever you can. You know, I see that stuff, and you know, it genuinely warms my heart. In fact, sticking with subscribe, I highly recommend you subscribe to the podcast if you have not subscribed today, because we are currently on the search to get 2,500 subs by the end of 2024, and it would be a major hand for you guys to help with that today, so that you guys as well can design and decide on the first tattoo I will ever get on my body. And if that's not enough for support, may I recommend you check out the merch shop at fourthwall.com, that link in the description below. We have some fantastic merch as done by some outstanding artists, especially the brand new logo design as done by the fantastic Roshan Galaxy, and I think you would look sensational in this streetwear today. But now, without further ado, please enjoy the Postmodern Art Podcast.
Hey, how are you? Can you hear me?
How about yourself?
Good.
Good to hear.
Actually, I have a little bit of a cold today, so if I sound sick.
Hey, you're perfectly fine with me.
But I'm good. But I'm happy to be here. But yeah, I just woke up a little sick.
I get it. You were at a convention yesterday. That was bound to happen one way or another.
I was just at a signing, and I was fine, and then I woke up, and I'm like totally like oh well, here we go.
Yes, here we go. No, but honestly, you sound perfectly fine to me. I listened. I took a chance to listen to like a couple of short interviews that you done with like Bada Boom podcast, or was it Flying Star, something like that. Mm-hmm. And like compared to those, you still sound good. You're good.
Okay. Well, thank you.
How are you doing today, by the way?
I'm good.
Aside from being a little sick, obviously.
Yeah, besides being sick, I've just been working on some colors on some, the second volume of Blood the Taken, so I've been keeping myself busy today.
Good. I know we'll definitely be talking about that when we get into the actual bulk of the conversation more than anything else. I can imagine how excited you are just to talk about that stuff, because the fact that like you are in prime like promotion mode right now for the first volume.
Yeah, and this is the first time I've done it too, so I'm like, I've done my own like self-promotion, for like back when I was like, putting out the book myself, and this is like a totally different thing, so it's like, it's cool to have like a company behind you and stuff, and like, it's a totally different world, so it's very cool.
I'll say I can only imagine, like, you know, for me, like, I'm an independent podcast, so I know what it is, like, self-promote yourself the entire time.
Yeah.
So, like, to have, like, the support of a company behind you to actually, like, get the stuff out there, get the word out there a little better, and, like, help you reach a mass you may have never gotten to before. Yeah, that's exciting. It sounds exciting.
Mm-hmm. It's cool, and to be working with like people that like believe in your project and stuff. I'm like, it feels nice to be like, people be like, no, we really like what you're making and we want to see more of it. It's like, oh, thanks.
That is awesome to hear. I know in my little bit of research, because I haven't had a chance to get the book yet. I do plan on getting it because it looks it looks amazing. Like just the look of it alone, like
thank you.
Your art style alone is what, like, whenever Tipsy or Jelly, however you dress her, whenever she told me about you. And like my first initial thought was, why have you not told me about this artist sooner? Because like I love your art style. It looks stunning.
Thank you.
So
I appreciate it.
Oh no, absolutely. But like, you know, I like just seeing the art style alone, and then actually looking more into what Blood of the Taken is about or whatnot. Like I need to get my hands on it sooner rather than later. I'll put it like that.
Yeah, please do. The more people that read it, I just it's cool to put something out, but it's like I want people to read the story. It's like I really
Right.
want people to see what it's about.
Like it's one thing to actually just get it out there, but it's another thing for people to actually enjoy it and like sink their teeth into it.
Exactly. I want to share the horror with everybody.
There you go. Well, I mean, hey, that's part of the reason why I wanted you to want to have you on the podcast today. So there we go. Um,
Exactly.
all right, Sean. Before we really get going, I must ask the icebreaker question of the podcast, if I may. Let's say you get to go to a desert island on your own accord. It's just you alone with your thoughts. You get to kick back, relax, breathe, and truly enjoy yourself for a little bit. With
Mm,
accommodations, you're not stranded on a desert island. It's like a little personal
right.
B&B paradise away from society for a little bit. To make sure you don't go further insane on this island, you could bring one piece of media or one piece of art with you to help whatever kind of headspace you want on this island. If given this opportunity,
Mm.
what would that one piece be?
The entire collection of X-Files.
Ooh,
Yep.
ooh, that is a very good one. But just out of
Yeah.
curiosity, why is that the first thing that you think of? Why you want to bring that with you?
Because I can watch that like over and over again. Don't get tired of it. Like there's a couple like different shows I could name, but like I think X-Files is the most honest. Then it would probably be Murder She Wrote if I couldn't bring that, and then it would probably be Dark Shadows. But X-Files would be my first one.
All three of those are like really good options regardless. But I
Yeah,
mean even in like the X Files alone, like that's a solid like pick, especially with like the wide variety of
yeah.
stories that they tell, like the characters and
Um,
such, like I can instantly see like that why that's the go to more than anything else.
yeah, that's like it's just been one of my favorite shows since I was a kid. And again, like anytime like I'm burned out or I'm tired, I just want to take a break. Like I just like turn on an episode and I can just like watch it. And again, there's like so many different kinds. Like you want a monster of the week, or you just want you want to watch the story, you want to watch something more drama. Like it's got it all.
Absolutely. Are we including the movie and the like quick little revival series as well in that
Yeah,
collection?
we could do that. I mean, I could just watch the first 5 seasons on repeat, but like I sometimes dive into like the later seasons, but I love like the earlier stuff and the movies, but I don't rewatch the movies as much.
That's valid. That's valid. But
Yeah,
regardless, the entirety of the X Files. That is your answer. You're locking that in.
yeah, just X-Files.
Then, if that's the case, I cannot think of a better way to start the Postmodern Art Podcast. Welcome, everyone. I am your host, Nathan Ragland. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, or follow whatever audio streaming platform you prefer. You would look fantastic in the merch that we have at the merch shop. Go to fourthwall.com. Link to that is in the description below. And follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, and TikTok at Postmod Art Pod for future updates and guest announcements, including today's guest. They are an illustrator, writer, and comic book artist whose newest comic book series, Blood of the Taken, is bound to be worth sinking your teeth into. Welcome to the podcast, Sian Mandrake.
It was good to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you here as well. I know I kind of already asked this already, but how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I have a little bit of a. I'm doing good.
That's good to hear. That is good to hear. I'm sure cold aside, we can power through this or whatnot, especially with
Oh, yeah, 100%. There's nothing I'd rather be doing than talking. So,
good, because I know especially with what we're going to be talking about today with this incredible
Mhm.
new comic book that you've published, Blood of the Taken, with the help of Storm King Comics. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's right.
Um,
Hmm.
the fact that releasing October 1st, which by the time this episode obviously drops, it's out there, so please people go get it. It looks absolutely stunning, and I cannot wait to, in more sense than one, sink my teeth into this story that you've sent out to the world. But before we talk about that, I want to go back just a little bit and learn more or less the origin story of Sean. What got you interested in arts and comics and stuff like that in the first place?
Okay, so I think that's just because I mean I was literally raised in a comic book household.
Mm-hmm.
Um, both my parents are professional comic book artists, so that's like I was literally in their studio when I was a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
They just set up like a spot for me like in between their two studios. So it'd be like my mom was on. They had like a studio space like in the attic, and like my mom was on one side, my dad was on the other, and like my like play TV and like my own like desk was in the middle. So like I always had like this like I was drawing since I was like a baby essentially, and then it kind of like snowballed from there. Like I just had like a love for it since I was a little kid.
I mean, I can only imagine because when I was doing my research for you, I'm not gonna lie, I was absolutely surprised to see who your parents were. For those who don't know, your dad is Tom Mandrake, and your mom, please correct me if I'm pronouncing her name right, Jan Durasima. Durasima.
Dorsma.
Durasima. There you go.
Mhm.
I apologize. I am not the best when it comes to names, but regardless, like for those who don't know, like
Oh, I think you're frozen.
am I frozen? Oh yeah. Okay.
Oh no, no problem.
I was gonna say
You're back now.
it's happened to me here and there. I'm wondering where the internet connection is, like or whatnot. But regardless, no, like whenever I was doing my research, I was just amazed because like to see kind of not only what they've been able to do, but like the works that they've been able to have the hand in, whether it be Martian Manhunter, the Spectre, the Star Wars comic book series or whatnot. Like I can only imagine like for you growing up, like it must have been amazing to see this kind of stuff, but also kind of like in a way, kind of like what you hinted at, almost like creatively enriching to kind of be around that kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I was exposed to like a lot of like fun media, not just like comics, but like movies too. Like my first movie that I was like exposed to, like my favorite thing when I was a kid was this like it was like a bootleg copy of like Totoro. And before like you could get like good copies of it and stuff, so it was all in Japanese, and I didn't understand it, but I loved that movie. Eventually we got like a dubbed copy of it and stuff, but like I was so obsessed with that movie when I was a kid. And that was like this like exposure that I had, that I was like, this is such like it was my favorite thing in the world. So I had so much, and then of course comics and everything else. But yeah,
Yeah.
so I think I just had like a really nice like different, exposed to different sorts of like art media when I was a kid.
I mean, to be fair, like you said, like Totoro was like one of the first things that you like fell in love with. Like any of those Miyazaki
Yeah,
movies or whatnot, like you don't have to understand
yeah.
what in the world they're saying. The art alone like transcends like language barriers more than anything else.
And that's the thing with that story, is like you know what's going on in that story just because the storytelling is so good.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's it works. And at the same time, I was also watching like um I think I saw like Frankenstein at the same time, and I was terrified of that. But I wanted to watch it like again. I was so afraid of that the first time I saw it, but of course, like I loved it at the same time.
When it comes to like the Mary Shelley's like Frankenstein and stuff like that, like I can easily see it's funny to think that like that stuff scared you in the first place because here you are really delving deep into the horror genre with what you're able to do. What is it about the horror genre that also like creatively like drove you to it and like even after you were scared in the first place you wanted to delve down that path?
I think there again, and I don't think I'm alone in this. I think a lot of people are initially afraid. People who are fascinated by horror are initially afraid of the creatures and stuff. But there's something that drives you back to it. Frankenstein specifically is a very sympathetic character, right? He's
Oh
a
yeah.
victim. Um, and so with a lot of these characters, there's so much more going on beneath the surface with it, an allegory. So I think that's what drives you back to it, is like the layers beneath the surface.
Absolutely. I mean that there's a
Yeah.
reason why that story has transcended time as well. Like, being retold over and over again throughout the years to the point where I think isn't Guillermo del Toro about to release his version of it like not too long from now as well?
Yeah. I can't wait for that's gonna be fantastic.
Oh, it's gonna be phenomenal, especially with how he handles storytelling. So I'm curious. Obviously, being exposed to all this different kind of art in one form or fashion, literally from basically the day you were born. When did it go from this kind of like general love and appreciation for arts, comics, horrors to a passion and wanting to make it your career?
Um, I mean, I guess I kind of always knew I wanted to do art in general. Even when I was like a kid, I always took art classes. I think I wanted to be a painter when I was in middle school or so. I was taking a lot of painting classes, so I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to write, so I kind of like I was always bouncing around.
Mm-hmm.
I went to art school. I went to the Kubert School. And then I got into coloring comics, but I wasn't sure. Like I was floating around to like jobs and taking jobs. You have to take jobs because you have to pay bills.
Of course.
Um, but it wasn't. I wasn't sure exactly. I wasn't focused. I wasn't sure where to focus things until um, I started writing in 2019. And
Okay.
when I started writing, um, and I started using that as sort of like therapy for myself, and really got passionate about writing and really started to have a focus for that. And that's when I realized like I can actually put my writing and like it's not a big thing, like a revelation. Like of course I can put writing and then my storytelling with comics and stuff. It kind of came together for me, I guess
Right.
personally. But it took me a long time to kind of figure out my own path and how I wanted to put my art together.
I mean, that kind of more or less makes sense. I mean, I can only imagine whenever you were out there just looking for the careers, looking to pay the bills or whatnot, you couldn't really focus on too much of the creative aspect as much as you really love to until you like took the time for yourself to kind of sit and stew on your own ideas, deal with your own emotions rather than just working for, you know, X company and you know, doing like the cover for something, you know?
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I don't think it's unusual in your 20s and stuff to not be sure what you want to.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think like floating around and trying different things and working for different people and just experiencing different avenues isn't it's not a negative either. It's just like figuring things out, you know. And I think I spent a lot of time just like I just wasn't sure what I wanted, and it just took me a while. And then I just sort of like I found the path that I'm currently, you know, enjoying. I don't know if I'll stay on this path forever. You never know.
Right.
But this is what I'm very passionate about at the moment. And I don't, you know, I see myself like right now. I'm like I have so many stories I want to tell, and I can't. There's so many that I don't know if I could finish them. Like given like 100 more years, I don't think I'd finish them all. Um,
I mean, that's good to hear. Regardless, that there's enough like creativity ready to just be unleashed onto the world. I mean, I know we're only getting a first taste of that with you know this new comic book series that you're unveiling, and we'll definitely talk about that in a second. I did at least want to acknowledge that like you know you've had some really interesting gigs beforehand working with like the likes of like DC Comics. What was it IDW IGW? Correct me if I'm wrong when it comes to that. Like
IDW, yeah.
yeah, it's got to be insane to think that like you've had some of the opportunities like that, but you like, but again, like you said, for that then it was just basically paying the bills. Like out of the work that you had before 2019, is there any that more or less like sticks out to you? Like, wow, I actually got the opportunity to do that.
Oh yeah, 100%. I got to work actually. I got to work in 2015. I colored a book with X-Files. So I got to
Ah,
work on several issues of that. That was really cool. I did several issues of Kronos Vampire Hunter. That was really cool. I'm sure there's a couple. Those two stick out specifically as like because I love Kronos and I love X-Files as we talked about earlier.
yep.
So those were some of my favorite projects.
I
Yeah.
I gotta imagine at least the X Files project that had to be kind of a full circle moment. The fact that you love that series so much, and yet here you are working on the comic book adaptation of it.
It was cool. It was one where I think Mulder gets like drugged and like he's like on this like psychedelic trip the whole time. So like it was like this very psychedelic X-Files comic. It was pretty cool.
That's incredible to hear. Regardless, have you,
Yeah.
Craig? I was wondering this when I was doing my little bit of research, and you know we don't have to dwell on this topic too much or whatnot. But have you ever had a chance to work with like your parents with any of the books that they had a chance to work on?
Yeah, actually I was coloring my dad's comics. Not exclusively, but I was his colorist for like years.
Oh wow.
Just because like we were working really well together. So like I was working for other people and then I started working with him and especially with Storm King actually when I started working with them um we started working together and like realized that like we worked I liked coloring and stuff. He liked my colors on his stuff and yeah we worked for several years together on projects which was it was really fun.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear regardless.
Yeah.
But now let's get to 2019. Let's talk about at least what leads up to kind of the big thing. What was more or less like
Yeah.
the big shift for you to go forth and try to go with your own creative path? Like what exactly made you think, you know what? As much fun as it is to work in the industry, I want to work for myself.
So like I guess I was again it's not super happy. I was pretty lost.
Hmm.
So I was like just trying to figure out so I kind of wanted to figure out what I wanted to do longer term. I was also feeling quite honestly a little bit burnt out with coloring. But I wanted to not that I don't really appreciate I don't want to ever sound like not appreciate because I really appreciate it. I love and I still do love coloring,
Of
but it's not
course.
something that I wanted to do like my whole life. I'm like I really want to do more. I really want to tell my own stories as well. So I was like I want to branch out and I had just gone through there'd been a death in the family, and that was something I was working through as well as some other personal stuff. So I was like, I just need to take some time, and I was having trouble like being creative. So it took some time to like work on some stuff and like some personal projects, and that's when I was like, okay, that's when I'm going to start writing, and I started writing like every day. It was like hours and hours. Um, and that's when I was like, oh, I think this is what I feel really like passionately about. And then it's again, I don't want to say obsession because it sounds a little bit too intense. So I'll
Right.
say passionate. I was very passionate about it. So that was my passion for I think 3 or 4 months. Like, and I actually wrote a novel length story, and it was a book at first. And then what's that? That's the when the pandemic. I finished the book the week the pandemic hit, and like everything kind of closed.
Oh, that's lovely.
And that's when I right? It was a weird time. Uh, and then I was like, okay, so um, I guess I can turn this into a comic. I talked to some people, and that's when I decided my time was best spent during this time where everything was closed down, turning it and reformatting it into a comic book. And it was a great. It was the obvious choice in retrospect, but yeah, it was. It's what I did.
And that novel, I'm sorry, I'm leaning this up like it's the people that it's like, and that person, Albert Einstein. No, but that novel is what eventually molded, reshaped, rose from the ashes of the pandemic to
Hmm.
become Blood of the Taken. Uh,
Yeah.
Now, for those who have no idea what in the world we're even talking about in the first place, how would you describe Blood of the Taken?
Um. So So there's a couple, but basically, Blood Taken is a story about an elderly vampire, as she has lost her brood.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know why she keeps losing her broods. That kind of comes into play later. Um, but she's looking for a new one, and she takes these two guys, these two best friends, against their will. That's not like they have a choice. They just wake up and they're taken, and they have to deal with who they are now, which are undead. And it's just about two people dealing with the repercussions of being taken by this vampire, and this new life or unlife that they have.
That is it. Just saying that little byline alone sounds like the premise for like a very intense like horror film on its own. Like like
Yeah,
I could imagine like Blumhouse like adapting something similar to that sometime within the next 5 years, you know?
that'd be
Like
cool.
two basically two best friends more or less taken against their own accords to become part of this new brood or whatnot. Like that
Yeah.
it sounds insane. Like I'm curious for you. Like, how did this concept even come to be to you? Like, what was the inspiration behind Blood of the Taken?
Again, I wanted to tell a story about a vampire. I thought it'd be fun to do like one with like an older woman, just because I hadn't seen that before, and I just thought like having this very she's almost like you don't see her as being this aggressor. Not that she couldn't be, but she's like I don't know 4'10". She's like this old grandma type, and all of a sudden she's like ripping people's throats out. She's just nobody sees her coming. And she's just devouring people. She's devouring the town. And the fact that I hadn't seen her before as a
Mm-hmm.
character. She's a Nosferatu type of vampire.
Right.
Um, but she's also kind of nice. She's kind of like, but she's very almost narcissistic, and how she proceeds with like taking care of the family. She thinks she's right, but she everything she does is like for her own gain. So everybody who's living with her is like, this is the worst thing ever. Um, but then, as far as the guys who live with her, it just kind of snowballs from like who's she gonna take? Oh, she needs family.
Yep.
Um, and I think the original story I had was like she was going to throw herself a birthday party. So she took a town for a birthday party and like kills everybody, and like everybody like dies at the sunrise.
Oh, lovely.
But for a longer story, I was like instead of like a birthday party, she takes people long term. So yeah, so it really was just um, it was her character and the people that had to live around her.
That is insane to Again, that is insane to hear. Regardless, first off, I for one would always welcome a vampire granny. I would love to see that in some form of media in one form or fashion, because that just sounds like fun. Like this little bitty that you probably would think is unassuming. Next thing you know, she's tearing out throats and draining the blood of victims or whatnot. That sounds fun. Let's have that, people.
Yeah.
Big horror out there. Make that a reality, okay? But I mean, regardless, like it does also kind of make sense. It's kind of like you said, like it's 410, unassuming granny or whatnot, like just wanting to find some form of family. So she just takes two random best friends, and hey, you're part of the brew now. Would you like some blood tea?
Yeah.
Like it's really cool to see that kind of idea like grow and evolve more than anything else. Once again, like I also gotta establish like just even seeing the characters, like you talked about, like the nosferatu kind of vampire and whatnot. Like I remember seeing the images of our vampire named Theo, as well as the two best friends Ed and Liam and such. I've said it before and I will say it again, your art style is absolutely stunning. I'm genuinely curious like how you develop that kind of style, because like it seems so unique but yet so familiar, so I'm curious how you develop that style.
I mean, with anything, it's like everything you've seen over a lifetime, right? But I
Mm-hmm.
think first it would be a lot of like I've watched a lot of movies.
Yep.
Um, just like a lot of like Universal movies and stuff. I love like classic Dracula, Nosferatu, that kind of stuff. I was really big into like 90s like indie comics. Like Johnny the Homicidal Maniac, that kind of stuff. So
Okay.
Jonan Vasquez, that kind of stuff. It's a combination of that, probably anime as well. Like I definitely watched a
Okay.
lot of like anime stuff, like, and I think that you can definitely see that kind of stuff in there as well. Like even like Sailor Moon and stuff. So like, it's a horror comic, but there's Sailor Moon influence somehow wrapped up.
That's always good to hear, more or less. I'm not gonna lie, when I initially saw the art style, I don't know if you remember this TV show. I only remember it because a YouTuber reviewed this show.
um,
But there's a show called Undergrads, and I don't know why, but I got like if you've ever seen the art style of that, I could tell like there are hints of, or at least it looked to me like there were hints of that in the art style. It was like an early
yeah.
like 2000s MTV show, if that tells you how good
Okay.
quality this is gonna be or whatnot. But I mean, regardless, like aside from that, like it's really cool to see like these characters, especially with these like unique like angles and shading and such, like really coming forth and coming to life, especially with like the character dynamic that you're talking about and such. Like I know this is supposed to be a horror comic, but I could also imagine if you had just tweaked it a certain way, one way or another, this could easily be like a dark comedy or something like that, kind of like the Dark Shadows, like you talked about.
Yeah, yeah, and I think I always like to board, and I think like any good um or a lot of horror that I like is like a little bit comedic.
Mm-hmm.
Like I love like Evil Dead and stuff, and that's obviously horror comedy. But like I like a little bit of comedy with my horror, even like when it's really bleak and stuff. And you think about when people are in like really awful situations, like the worst situations possible, people are gonna have that like gallows humor.
Yep.
And I think especially like the character Ed, if when you read the book, you'll see that these characters have that like very dark sense of humor.
Oh, I could only
So I think
imagine.
that definitely goes through the story. And Theo too. She's awful. She definitely has a wicked sense of humor.
I mean, if you live to be 500 years old, you gotta pick up like a thing or two along the way, you know?
Yeah, you can't live that long without finding things humorous.
Yeah, like if you live that long without a sense of humor, what's worth living, you know?
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
I I don't know why I made that random noise right there. Anyways, no, but obviously, another major aspect when it comes to this like horror thing more than anything else is obviously like the idea of vampires. Like I know like we kind of tease it or whatnot when it comes to that, like that's a key factor when it comes to like the loneliness aspect. But what is it about vampires that made you want to tell a story based on them? Like what intrigued you about that creatively and wanted to delve into that realm?
I mean, I've always enjoyed the myth of the vampire.
Mm-hmm.
That's just something I've always found fascinating. And um, like I guess I was re-inspired probably after watching What We Do in the Shadows, like the movie. But
Okay.
that came out in what, 2016. And then I kind of like but I was like always like I was like I loved like all that stuff when I was like a teenager. So I was like vampires, werewolves, all that stuff was like I loved all that stuff. I was very into that. But in terms of like why I want to tell this story specifically, I just think it's a very easy way to tell. Um, it is an easy way to tell that kind of story where you're talking about like outsiders. And I just think it fits the characters, and especially again, I just want to tell a story about that old grandma vampire.
I again, like I said, big horror out there. We definitely need more vampire
Yeah.
grandmas like that.
Yeah.
Like I cannot tell you, like I was already intrigued to like really delve into this book whenever I first heard about you and wanted to bring you on the podcast, but especially hearing like the different aspects of it now more than ever, like I cannot tell you how excited I am to go head first into this series. I can only
Yeah.
I can only imagine for you, like with all these different aspects, like being able to finally be able to tell this story in one form or fashion. It has to be exciting, especially nowadays that the first volume is out there.
Oh yeah, 100%. And for a while, I've been self-publishing single issues, but having like a full like 150 pages and like spoiler, but just end on a cliffhanger. So like it's not
How
totally
dare you?
satisfying ending. So like for me, like it's nice to like give people like a nice like chunk of story to like you said, like sink their teeth into.
Yep, yep. I always love that metaphor. Plus, it doesn't hurt that you have a good famous name more or less attached to it, with it
Yeah.
being known as John Carpenter's Night Terrors or whatnot.
Yeah.
That had to be cool whenever you like. I don't know if that was the point in the first place when you started making Blood to Take It, but it has to be kind of cool to have a name like John Carpenter attached to this thing.
I had no idea that I would ever like when I started working that I would ever work with John Carpenter and Sandy King.
Hmm.
But it's really cool and they're super fantastic and like super kind, nice people too. So like that's even cooler. Just that they're just like fantastic to work with. And it's like a super nice company. So like yeah, it's just like it's awesome.
I, that was actually gonna lead me to my next question: is like, how involved was John Carpenter with this whole entire thing?
He's not really involved. But Sandy King is the one who's like who runs the company and like she's the one who like is more hands-on with everything.
Hmm.
So like she's the one who was interested in the project and she's the one who picked it up and everything. So yes, so she's the one who was like, I want this, and I was like, really? And she's like, yes, and I was like, oh wow.
That I was gonna say that had to be a good like confidence booster more than anything else. The
Yeah.
fact that, like you said, this is a story you've been toying around with since 2019, and here it is. Like she wants to really bring this thing to a new light, to a new audience.
It was so much that I didn't believe her the first time. I was like, oh, she's just, she's saying that it was online. And she asked me again. And I was like, oh, you're serious? And she's like, of course I'm serious. I wouldn't just ask you. And I'm like, oh, yeah, no, that makes sense.
It's like you also gotta realize I also run a company as well. If I didn't think this thing was
Yeah.
gonna sell, I wouldn't ask. That's awesome to hear. I mean, for you, because in fact, you've been tinkering with the stories, for years now. At this point, like I can only imagine there's so many different aspects of it that you're excited to reveal to this new audience, more or less in one form or fashion. What's been your favorite part about developing this story?
I really enjoy working with the characters. And just like their interactions with each other and how like the building. So like I started with um it's basically the same story, right? Like
Hmm.
it's the same character, same story as I had with the novel, but they have evolved so much as characters since then. Because you evolve as a writer and everything. Um, so I think it's just like Theo has evolved some, but I think Ed and Liam have evolved a little bit more as
Right.
like more rounded characters. And even some of the other casts, like you'll meet uh, uh, I guess I can say it doesn't matter. Livy, who's Liam's sister, and Parker, who's an ex in the story, and they become important later, so we meet them later in the story.
Okay.
And these are other characters that become more important as the story goes on. And I didn't know that much about them originally, but now I'm working on the second volume, and it's like I get to really get to know these characters, and it's really exciting to like get to write and get to know more people that I'm working like in this universe.
Absolutely, really, really growing and expanding this little niche, little university, more or less developed for yourself. Uh,
Yeah.
I am curious before I do want to talk about the second volume that you're developing, but I am curious, at least when it comes to the first volume that is published out there. And once again, people should definitely get it if they can. I will have links in the description to where you can find it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all different bookstore places that you can find it. But do you have a particular favorite moment or a particular favorite panel or a particular favorite interaction in that first volume that you look at and you're like, this is like peak Sian Mandrake right here?
Um, I think I have two moments. One, I really like the scene where Theo's performing dentistry on Liam. Um, and the other moment I really like is where Liam and Ed are in the they're in the canal talking later on in the book. After Liam and Theo come to like rescue Ed, and they're just talking, and they're kind of like reconnecting, and it's like a very quiet moment, and like they're just like it's a very quiet like reconnection moment. And I think that's just like a very like sweet moment. That's like this like moment of like their friendship, and like after everything that's happened, and they're just like still they're still best friends.
Absolutely. I
Yeah,
love the dichotomy of just the two mentalities or whatnot because
yeah,
like first off, dentistry. You can't tell me that's just not pure chaos when that happens. Like cuz
yeah. She was a dentist in like 1500.
Ah, yes. If there's an expert that I would believe in is someone that was a dentist in 1500.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with a pair of pliers.
Well, at least the technology's upgrade cuz I can only imagine what
Yeah,
it was back then like whatever they used to I don't know like grab on the cows or something like that back then. It's like
yeah.
I actually got a clean pair of pliers for this one. All
I
right.
don't think they're clean.
My bad. Sorry for assuming. It's like you have the chaotic moment that is dentistry, and then you have this sweet, like, somber moment of like friends just basically being like, I love you, man. I love you too.
Yeah.
Like essentially, like I imagine that has like just I imagine that both the emotion of both of those moments, but also like just having that wide range of emotions throughout the story, that's got to be a lot of fun to play with. Like just think of these incredible scenarios and how you're gonna more or less like be able to play them out. Like especially with how wide of a range you have right there, because I can only imagine if those are like two of your favorites. I can only imagine how many other different kinds of scenarios with all sorts of different emotions you're ready to just play around with and bring to the audience and see just how wild and insane these characters can be messing with each other.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is like it's fun to have those like you need those like intense moments, but it's those quiet moments I think are what like um kind of keep you there. Like you need that like intense like ridiculous horror, but if you don't have the quiet moments, like you need something to make the characters feel real, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's like, like look at any like horror film or like slash and stuff like that. Like obviously you're gonna have like the intense like chase scene more than anything else, but you also gotta have kind of the moment to where like it's calm and quiet and kind of get the revelation of like the monster's motives more than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So like to obviously incorporate that into something like this makes complete and utter sense.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Um, and especially like I said, that's just the first volume they've been able to tease with. Like you kind of hinted at a couple times. You're already. I'm only curious how much you've gotten started with when it comes to volume two of Blood of the Taken.
I'm on page I think 115.
Oh,
150, so yeah.
you are really. How long have you been working on volume two, if I can ask? Because volume one just got released. How long have you been working on volume two?
So I've actually this one's like a speed run. So
Oh,
it's interesting because the other one, I took a couple of years on. This one I've actually only started the end of last year, and I'm trying to finish it by the end of this year.
oh wow.
So that's very different pacing, yeah. And it's interesting to see how much work I can get done in a year. Um, versus the other one because I was publishing myself and I didn't really have a timeline. It's very different.
And like you said, this first issue is more or less, or this first volume is more or less like Theo introducing our two best friends into the brood or whatnot. You kind of hinted at that there's gonna be some characters added into this universe. I'm now curious, like when it comes to volume two, how much more of the world are we expanding? How much more are we gonna be seeing with volume two?
Well, there are maybe more vampires than just, Theo and her boys. But Theo has family. And then, of course, Liam and Ed have to deal with the people that they've left behind, too.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
You intrigue me by saying, "Oh yeah, Theo has family," because you said in the first, like for the first one, like Theo's lonely, so I'm wondering like what family's gonna be like. We've been here the entire time, right?
Theo, she's very forgetful.
I mean, you're 500 years old. You forget a thing or two, you know.
Exactly. And that's kind of a running problem with her. She tends to forget.
But she'll never forget that dentistry. That thing's gonna stay with her till
No.
the day she dies. Well, if
She
she
went
dies.
to Yeah, she's been performing like the same dental work for like 500 years.
Well, I imagine there's got to be at least a solid success rate when it comes to that, right? Right?
Yeah, some of her patients die, but they can't tell anybody about it.
What dentistry don't deal with a few losses on their
Right.
that is. I should say, for context, when it comes to this podcast, we do not condone deaths in dentistry.
No, these are she's a vampire. I can't, I do not condone it.
Of course not. I mean, regardless, like you've got volume one out there. You're like, I'd say you correct me if I'm wrong, but you're at least at the home stretch when it comes to getting volume two done at this point. Like,
Yeah.
I imagine it's gotta be really exciting for you to continue to tell this story because I can only imagine it's gonna be more than just two volumes. Like, how long do you want to be working on this world of Blood of the Taken?
I have three planned out. So the second one and the third one actually have an end to the
Okay.
story. Um, you know, and there could be more, but like the third one does have closure to some degree. It is left open, but there is some sort of like closure to the overall story.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So one of those like, yeah, there might be a major aspect of it, but if you really wanted to, if there's certainly a demand for it more than anything else, you could continue on a different aspect and tell so many different stories within this universe. I can only imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, it's got some closure for the characters, and um, it definitely brings some things like home, for
Absolutely.
better or worse.
For better, for worse. And I can only imagine, especially with the reception you've more or less gotten with just volume one alone, it's got to be amazing for you to see so many people already like jumping on this opportunity, falling in love with this book, and wanting to see more in this universe, to see more with these
Yeah.
characters.
Oh yeah, like it's really exciting, and again, um, it's just really cool to see like people like reading it and like reacting to it, and like that's what you hope for when you create something, right? Is like you want people to read it and feel something, and you really want people to have some kind of emotion, feeling, feel something, enjoy it, because you spent time making it.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Again, as a creator,
Or
my
hate it, even if they hate it.
yeah, I was gonna say, look, as a creator myself that spends times, talking to so many different creators about their projects or whatnot, just pushing it out there and seeing people just absolutely love it or react to it in one form or fashion is always
Exactly.
rewarding. Is always rewarding.
Hmm. Because that means that they read it and they had some kind of reaction to it. Means that like they still like felt something from it.
It means that it left an impact on them one form or fashion. Doesn't matter how big or how small, it left something behind for them.
Exactly, and that's all you can hope for, and that's what I'm looking for.
Exactly. I can only imagine for you, now that you at least got the basic three down ready to go, what should the people expect when it comes to Blood of the Taken?
um, you mean when it's what do you mean?
Like obviously, because again, volume one is out there, and again, once again, if people have not, there are gonna be links in the description. Definitely buy this book. I'm
Yes.
gonna be doing that. But like, especially now you're almost done with volume two, and you got volume three coming at some
Mhm.
point in the near future, whatnot. When you do get that out there in the world, or even for people that haven't read the first volume, what should they expect if they want to delve into this world? What should they hope for?
Um, you know, I don't read the first one, and then you have to. Um, I guess it's hard to know what to expect with Theo because she's such a wild card. um,
You can at least
but
expect halfway decent dentistry. No, I'm joking.
yeah, no, don't expect that. Talk to Liam about that because I feel bad for him. Um, once you read volume one, I guess you'll know what to expect, because it's definitely left open. But no, there's definitely going to be a volume two, so I think that'll at least give you hope for some people in the story. If but I won't give too many spoilers.
Oh,
But there are three volumes, so you can expect some characters will make it through to volume two.
I'll say I didn't expect you to give too many spoilers. I mean, you need people to come back to read this stuff more than anything
Mhm.
else. But I mean, regardless,
Yeah.
especially.
So I
Sorry, you go ahead.
Oh no. But I promise they won't all perish in one volume.
Thank you. Thank you. That's all I can hope for because like you just introduced like fun grandpire grandpire.
Oh yeah. No, the thing is she's gonna probably be, she's survived 500 years. I'm more worried about everybody else that, like, keeps dying around her.
I was gonna say that and the people that just got indoctrinated into this thing unwillingly. I can only imagine how their
Yeah.
mentos are being thrusted into this kind of potential scenario.
Well, that's the problem, is like if you don't do what she says, you're probably gonna die.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah.
If that's the case, yeah, maybe I should listen to the
Yeah.
500-year-old grandma vampire.
Yeah. Except if you do what she says, then you have to, like, start murdering people, and not everybody's into that. So
I think I'm willing to make an exception to live.
so you'd be fine.
See, see, why did you cast me? All right, why did you bring me into this? No,
Yeah, you could. She'll have to, she picked the wrong people, obviously.
I'm gonna be the secret like fourth person of the crew that you're introducing in
Yeah.
volume three, right? That um, I mean, it's incredible to know that you already got like a good story, a good timeline, ready for Blood of the Taken. But I know you also said that like you have a lot of stories that you want to tell. That even if you had 100 more years, you don't know if you could tell all those stories. It makes me curious as well. When you are done with Blood of the Taken, more than anything else, what are some of the other concepts, or what are some of the other ideas that you'd love to bring to life? Is there any that you were just like brimming and ready to go just to tell this kind of story? Because I can only imagine, like I said, with what you talked about, there's got to be at least one that's got to be like next in line if the opportunity arises.
So another one that I'm working on, currently, it's called Robin's Nest,
Okay.
and this one is sort of about this person who dies, or we assume dies, has come back from the dead, and uh, as a ghoul, but his partner recognizes him in the graveyard, essentially, and kind of like what happens after. But it's more of like this horror story. There's a serial killer involved. Except the ghoul isn't the actual monster in the story, it's the serial killer. The ghoul just happens to be kind of living in the cemetery, and they just get involved in like this serial killer sort of thing. Um,
Okay. kind
yeah.
kind of a story of like accepting like these kind of changes while also, hey, there's a serial killer in the background, maybe we should take care of that as well.
Yeah, and it's more just like dealing with a person who comes back almost as a different person, but it's like the same soul sort of thing.
Right.
So it's like a very, like, it's just kind of an exploration of that.
That sounds like it has the potential to be very horrifying, very tense, but also could be a very touching story. Because in fact, that it's like you said, same soul, different body. Like learning to
Yeah,
cope with that. That has to be a mind melding experience for the widow in this case.
exactly. And it's just the exploration of that, and then somebody who's basically lost their memory, but has, is so the two people are still in love, essentially, and then just this reconnection that's taking place, and like this new life that they're creating together.
Why does this sound like something that A24 would make? I know I made the Blumhouse connection earlier, but
Yeah,
like this sounds like something that A24 would want to produce more than anything
I
else.
could see that. Yeah,
I mean, these are the same people that made like what Swiss Army Man and all the weird
yeah,
and everything anywhere, everything everywhere all at once or whatnot, like that
yeah.
obscure story or whatnot. I could see them like
Mhm.
taking a story like this and having like a really unique twist on it with like the one half love story, one half horror story, like that.
Yeah.
I can only it makes me excited to see when you're actually able to tell this story because you said you're working on it. So I can only imagine
Mhm.
if you're focused on Blood to Take It now, I can however long it takes, and please do take your time, but however long it takes to tell this story, I am excited to see this one as well.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, again, with Blood the Taken, that should be coming out. It's volume two will come out next October if I get my work done.
Okay.
And then volume three, hopefully we'll have that. Again, we're assuming everything continues as planned.
Yep.
And then after that, hopefully I'll be working on other projects. Who knows, where I'll be going next with it. But yeah, I hope to keep making stories.
I know I kind of teased it with like the like what I just did right there with the A24, like the Blumhouse or whatnot. But
Yeah.
any of these stories that because you said writing's a major thing, would you ever consider like taking one of the stories and instead of going the comic book route? Would you consider like trying to see if you can write like a real script for it and try to present it to studios and such? See if one of them can produce one of these incredible stories.
I mean, yeah, that would be cool. I think a lot of times, and I could be wrong about this, people will take comics and submit them, or like people are more interested in seeing the comic version, and that's how gets that ball rolling.
True.
But if, somebody was interested, I would be more than happy to do that.
Okay. I'm
Yeah.
just I'm just saying if there's any representative for any of these film studios out there that
Yeah.
hear both Blood of the Taken or Robin's Nest and it's thinking, we could do something with this. I'm just saying, Sean's right here. They'd be more than happy to talk to y'all. Make this a reality. I mean, I can only imagine like for you, especially with what you've been able to both accomplish as of late with being able to publish Blood of the Taken, which I don't know if I said this earlier, but congratulations on actually getting that thing published. I know for some people it's
Thank
hard.
you.
I can only
It
imagine
is.
I can only imagine like it's hard for some people to get their stuff published in the first place, but I can only imagine how much of a wild journey it was for you to go from like posting this thing online to actually having like a physical copy out there for the masses to read.
Yeah, no, and it is. Anytime anybody self-publishes anything, like, there's so much work that goes into that, especially if you're self-publishing, and that is huge for anyone who's able to do that.
Absolutely. So, like, from what you've been able to accomplish to actually being able to self-publish this or to publish this thing, the years you've had in the comic book industry as a whole, thinking back all the way to when you started first being introduced to all these different arts and stuff to where you are now, are you more or less surprised or impressed with the art journey you've been able to come along?
Recently, I think, now, yes, yes, because, and there's two parts of this.
Okay.
Yes, I am happy with what I've been producing as of late. Like, I feel like I have been working very hard. From like realistically, I have been working as hard as I can. Day to day, I will look at my work and I hate it, and I'm like, you're the worst, and I have to put it down and walk away. But I know that is just me as an artist, and that is just like a thing that I just do. And I think a lot of artists feel that way, or some artists do, where it's just like, you get too close to your own work.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, I am happy. Like, I have been putting in my best effort, and I am working my hardest, and I'm happy with like the fact that I am able to do this, and like it's really cool that like I'm able to put these stories together and stuff. So it's very exciting.
Absolutely. I mean, trust me, I've talked to so many different artists when it comes to like seeing their stuff on a day to day basis. I mean, if you look at something long enough, you're gonna notice like all the different details about it, and you're gonna start critiquing it a million different ways instead of just like looking at it as a whole of being like, wow, I actually was able to do this. What the fuck?
Yeah. And when I started, my when I first started my first issue, what I told myself is it doesn't matter. Like, you want it to have a certain amount of polish, but I'm like, even if you're not happy with it, you're gonna keep going because it's about putting the story out. It's not about a perfect product because it's a comic book. It's not a the art doesn't have to be perfect, and that's not what the comic's about. So I had to tell myself that when I started, and I was able to move forward and finish the book because I put myself in that mentality, and that really helped me.
Well, there you go. It's good to have that mentality at the end
Yeah.
of the day more than anything else. But
Mhm.
speaking of different mentalities, for this next question, if I may, I want to give you a different kind of mentality. I want to give you the above and beyond mentality and give you more
Okay.
or less the dream scenario, if I may.
Okay.
Let's say I am Big Shot Mr. Moneybags. I come to him like, look, Sean, we've seen the work you've been able to have a hand in, like especially with Blood the Taken and all your art online. We know there's potential for something incredible here. You just need that little extra push, a little extra platform to get you to that next step. We have access to everyone and anyone in whatever industry possible, and more money than should be possible. We really should be compensating the animators that are currently on strike right now. They need those contracts, pensions, all stuff like that. Hashtag stand with animation. But we'll focus on them in a little bit. We promise. We promise. Right now, we are focusing on you and you alone. If given this opportunity, what would be the dream Sian Mandrake project?
I mean, it this would be live action or cartoon or
It's whatever you want it to be. Again, access to
um
everyone and anyone to produce whatever you want.
I would love to see, and this is such like a wild dream, but I think it would be really cool to see Blood Taken as a live action TV show. Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. I could,
Yeah.
especially with what I've been able to see visually of it, and like the ideas you've already put out there with,
Mhm.
again, Vampire Granny taking two random people and being like, "You're my friends now. We're having soft tacos." No.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm almost curious now. Do you have like a little fan casting in mind? Like, if you were to make this thing a live action show, like, what would be the kind of people that you want to bring on to bring these characters to life?
I don't.
Okay.
People have said like they have like people in mind, but like I've never seen people like I've never even like dared to do that.
Okay.
Because it's like I don't dare to dream that big, I guess. But like I think it would be really cool. I just be happy to like, I think that would be so cool.
We'll just cast we'll cast Ryan Reynolds, Hugh Jackman, and we'll bring Betty White back to life in order to have. No,
Um, but I think you could get some like really interesting people in the roles too. Because
absolutely.
I think the characters lend themselves to different kind of like character faces.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Especially with the faces you've been
Yeah.
able to present in your art more than anything
Yeah.
else. Trying to find a way to recreate that is going to be a task all on its own.
It
I'm gonna tell
is.
you that. But I, for one, I for one would be excited to see how, if you're given the opportunity, how to make that a reality more than anything else. Um,
Yeah.
but sadly, we gotta get down from the dream scenario. We gotta get back to reality, and I'll ask the ever so generic question:
Okay.
where do you hope to see yourself in, say, 5 to 10 years from now?
5 to 10 years. I hope I'm still probably done with Play the Taken series. That would be great. And that's all published. That would be really cool. And I'm hoping to be on a new project.
There you go. I mean,
Yeah.
at the very least, you did say you have Robin's Nest in the works. That could be a big
Yeah.
one. I can.
So yeah, I hope to be done with this project because I want to get that story out and onto a new project.
There you go. There we go. That's a good thing
Yeah.
to aspire for. I mean, more or less
Yeah.
getting to do more of what you love, let that creativity flow. That
Mhm.
you've been wanting to for the past 5 years alone. I mean, who are we to
Yeah.
complain, right?
Exactly.
As we start to wind down the interview, I just have one last question I want to ask you, Sean. Obviously, you're deeply entrenched in art in one form or fashion. I mean, like we said, you've basically been in the art since you were born. Look at your parents, just saying. Um,
Mhm.
how important is art, not just for you, but for the world as a whole?
Um, I mean, it's in everything, right? It's in everything you look at day to day, everything you consume. Even if you're looking at designs and signs and everything like that, it's literally all around you. I mean, the fabric here, that's, designed by somebody. Um, so yeah, it's life. And that's like a whole discussion with, I guess, you take that away from people, but people are going to create art because I think that's just part of humans. It's humans to create art, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I will say I do find it funny that of all the things that you're in your room that you could have pointed, like somebody created that, somebody created this. You
Yeah.
pointed to the
Well, those are
curtains.
easy.
Those are, you know what? Valid point. I will
Yeah.
respect that. I'll respect that. But regardless, I think that is wonderfully worded, if I do say so myself. Um, Sean, that is all the questions I have for you. I've already showered you with a whole bunch of praise, but I want to shower you a little bit more because it's my podcast. I do what I want. Um, hopefully, the internet will allow me to get everything out there without freezing up. But no, ever since I was first introduced to yourself by our good friend Tipsy J Hearts or Jelly, however you know her or whatnot. I've just been impressed with your stuff. Like your art style alone, I knew just seeing how you drew like these vampires and such. I had to have you on this podcast because I love your art style as a whole. Like I cannot get enough of that. But then seeing more about the story of Blood of the Taken and seeing these characters and getting to learn more about them, whether it was what I was able to do beforehand or listening to this conversation now, like I'm excited for this story. I'm excited to see how you're gonna be able to tell this insane tale of found family in a different sense. Maybe not the found family you were anticipating. I mean, regardless, like especially as I was doing more research about you, seeing like the history that you kind of have when it comes to comic books as a whole, seeing that your parents were veterans and this stuff, but also seeing you have this experience and getting the chance to talk to you now, and understanding that this is something that you've been struggling to find for years until like I said, not even 5 years ago up to this point or whatnot, and really going forth and making this a reality for yourself. I cannot help but love and respect that you're going forth and making this a reality. It's impressive and it's inspiring to see you go forth and put all that creativity that has always been there and really unleashing it like it never has before, and seeing you put such a quality product out there. It makes me excited, not just for Blood of the Taken, but whatever you're going to be doing next, because I know it's going to be incredible. I know it's going to be creative. I know it's going to look absolutely stunning, and I cannot wait to see what's going to be next, because again, like I said, just based on our conversation alone, I know there's a lot of creative juices left to flow, and I want to see what's going to be unleashed onto the world. Long and the short of it is, Sean, thank you so much for what you do. Thank you for letting yourself out there, and thank you for letting that creativity flow. Just know that whatever you're going to be doing next, I'm going to be one of many, and hopefully many more, that's going to be rooting for you every single step of the way. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Trust me.
Yeah.
I speak nothing but the truth. Trust me.
Oh,
Now,
no, that's really nice.
now, if people want to see more about, like I said, Blood of the Taken and all the stuff we've been talking about, because if they are not convinced by now, I don't know what's going to convince them. Go ahead and plug your stuff for the people at home.
So I'm at on Instagram at Sian Mandrake. And I'm on Threads, same thing, Sian Mandrake. I think Twitter, Sian Mandrake. TikTok, classic_vampirism. And that's everything. And then the book, you can find it at the Storm King Comics website, just Blood of the Taken. You can also find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, same thing. You can find it's just John Carpenter's Night Terrors, Blood of the Taken.
There you go. And
Yeah.
obviously, those links, they're going to be the first ones in the description when I'm listing the links. If you missed any links, I'll be sure to have them in the description below, because I, for damn sure, is going to be buying this thing after we get done with this conversation more than anything else. I definitely need to get my hands on this book. Do you have any final words before we sign off?
No. Thank you so much for having me. Like, this was really great.
Well, good. I'm glad you had a good time, and I really do appreciate you taking the time to sit down and chat. This was a fun chat and really eye opening. I know we joked about it at the beginning, but I certainly cannot wait to sink my teeth into this story and then some. And with that, all I've left to say is, for the people at home, if you can, please pay your artists.
Yeah.